very beginning. We are at the Urvakan discussion panel. Here is me, Bulat, Khalilov, co-founder of Electric Recordings, Hayk, Karoyi, Armenian composer and musician. Shabara is part of Sinyava music group, and he's from Indonesia. And Bint Mbareh is a Palestinian sound researcher. So today we will...
Can you please speak louder? Could you please speak louder?
Studies and art as a tool for communicating, for decolonization, and so on. Let's, from the very beginning, start from the problematic. Do we understand the problems on the same thing, or we have different views? So let's talk from the colonial issues with the music. Do you feel and do you understand yourself as a non-Western artist? Do you feel it's something that describes you? And if yes, do you feel some strange attitude or good attitude as a non-Western artist from the audience, from the labels, from the Western audience? What do you think about this?
Is it okay if I go first? Let me know if someone has something really urgent that they need to say right now before I go. I appreciate the question because it actually like made me think a lot about what it means to be a Western artist, and not specifically in a world where we don't, as children, we don't really have a choice what kind of music we listen to. We're probably listening to a 12-tone, repertoire of music growing up, even if it doesn't have like English in the language, French in the language, Spanish in the language, most of the time. Because my initial response to this was like, me, a Western artist, my first time being in a Western country was like as a slightly older person. So of course I'm not a Western artist, but then I thought like what possibilities did I feel like I had growing up as a child and learning, or like what options did I have learning music that is kind of like more intentionally or unintentionally microtonal? What options did I have kind of be like dealing with music not just as an art, but also in a lot of indigenous communities, music is there's a lot of tools, like it helps us mourn, or like it helps us be in protest, or like it helps us summon rain, or it helps us do a lot of things. But I grew up actually like not knowing most of this about the music about music in Palestine. So if I want to call myself like a non-Western artist, I would say that this is something that I'm kind of working on, or something that I am in process of making myself into. But yeah, it's tough to say right now that I'm an artist who is fully immersed in decolonization, or like fully understanding my culture, that my culture as a culture that's not just responding to Western culture, or so yeah, those are my thoughts on that.
Okay, thank you, Bint. That was very nice. Yeah, for me, I'm definitely not a Western artist. I'm from like Southeast Asia. It's not mainstream at all. But honestly, I never really thought about this kind of issues like colonial, decolonial, or not until I make music and appreciate it more in the global scale. So, and then more and more I started to reflect on this, and then what it does to my practice and how I can continue with my practice, and then now after more than 10 years I'm doing this, I think at this stage I don't want to be, I'm not a Western, non-Western, I'm a non-Western artist, but that should not be like, I don't want to be defined by that, you know what I mean? Because I think at this stage it's about that, because like all this theme of decolonization and all of this should be, not should be, like more and more the Western hemisphere, or like the Western world, try to talk about this, while actually if we want to really talk about it, it should be not the Western part of the world should be talk about it. You know what I mean? Because this is another way of the West trying to co-opt the idea. So I think from my point of view is to actually coming out of this loop, we should like from the non-Western artists themselves should make a clear stand of what they are, or who they want to be, you know. So for me, I think I want to be defined as just a normal artist, as just as anybody, and then I think that would stop the loop of trying to see West or non-West, and then because seriously, that's like if we look at like I don't know how to explain. Maybe this is like just the intro. Maybe we can discuss more in even more specific. Maybe, yeah, it's too broad at the moment. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I start from the really general question to catch more things. And Hayk, what your thoughts about this?
Hello. I think nowadays, for me, it's like I'm presenting, for example, Armenian music. How can I say? But it's not only about Armenia. It's about the history, who comes to Armenia, who give some kind of new genres, I can say, who give some smells to Armenian music. And nowadays it's interesting, I think, to be artists like from Armenia and presenting type music. It's for Western people too interesting to listen, to speak, to understand what I mean, what I'm playing, what about I'm playing, and that's all I think. And my colleagues are talk, and I am agree with this. Yes, that's all for now. And my English, it's not so super good. Sorry for this. And yeah, for now, that's all I'm thinking.
My English is not super good too, and let's see this thing is the colonial thing here. Yeah. So also I'm agree with different parts what you said, all of you, and maybe it's colonial thing to look at the world as a West and non-West, because it's really strange to generalize things, because we are from the different parts of the world. For example, North Caucasus, Nalchik and Circassian region, where I'm from, and Armenia is like kind of neighbors. But even we, with Hayk, we have a really different context. And we have a really different context with Indonesia and Palestine. But in the end, we're from the West, media and in general, they look at us not as people from different parts of the world, but as a non-Western. So I think it's a part of the problem too, when we start to think about our problems from this perspective and from this paradigm. So yeah, and it's usually in this art sphere and the music sphere when the artist like, let's say this again, non-Western artists, when they do some music, usually, no matter what he's doing, it's described as an ethnic art, something like connected with the roots, connected.
Spicy.
Yes, something like wild and exotic in a good way. So what do you think how this ethnic cliche works with the with your art and with your self-understanding? Do you agree with this, or do you like kind of fight with this? And what do you think about the non-Western artists who use this exotization and maybe self-exotization? Yes, let's start maybe from the Bint.
I mean, while you were talking about the Western, non-Western dichotomy, or when you first asked this, I just want to make the comment and then move on to answering the question. The thing that I kept thinking about, obviously it's not a dichotomy. Obviously, we need to make like different subjectivities where when I go to Indonesia, like I will not only have like ideas of what Indonesian art and Indonesian music can look like, that's based on like, you know, my rather white university professor's understanding of gamelan. You know, I studied ethnomusicology. You know, there's a lot that we need to do on a personal level that allows us to kind of relate to each other outside of the Western mirror. But I'm sure we can agree that like with a lot of the money and the economic exchange that exists in, you know, not even Western countries, right? We're not even talking about geography, obviously. But maybe like even a global Western North kind of situation, we are forced into a corner where we have to respond, or we're forced into some kind of, so this is kind of my idea of like what I mean when I'm responding to like a Western, or when I say, am I a Western or non-Western artist, right? Because I mean, I feel like there is a very specific power dynamic, and it's not about the geography, and it's not a dichotomy, but there is like, yeah, some power that I feel when I have to go study ethnomusicology specifically in London, you know, and I can't, for example, study that as honestly back home in Palestine where I grew up. Yeah, I think it's very difficult to make sentences about it without essentializing it or like reifying or like making it even more real than it has to be. So yeah, I'm happy that we're having that conversation about like what does it even mean. So damn, I forgot the question. Oh, self-exotization. I was yeah, because for me it's I have not really been following, like apart from my university years, I don't really know how our people, or like how Palestinian people and Jordanian, Syrian, Lebanese people specifically have been studied by the outside world. But I think it's like really easy to also be in the context of like living in London and to notice all of the, you know, all of the parties, all of the labels, all of the people, all of the like sounds that are coming out that are like fucking weird. Like who grew up and like going to Palestinian weddings, or like just in context where this music was hegemonic or like was not an other, and plays like that in like whatever, like say a DJ set or something like that, you know? For me, it's, yeah, I find a lot of like music that comes out of, and this is gonna sound really mean, and I don't mean it in this way, because I know that I have different accesses to Palestinian music, but I find that it's really like specific to people in the diaspora, myself included, that we kind of almost automatically start shifting we imagine an audience, and that audience doesn't know anything about us. So that's when we start noticing like any example I'm going to give is just going to get me in a lot of trouble, but that's when we start seeing people playing music that we think is really like outdated, that is only will be enjoyed by the white people who come to our gigs, that is like just like completely chewed, you know, it's like been ran through. Like it's just this happens like definitely more often than I would like to admit, you know. So I ask myself the question really often, sorry, this is taking really long. I ask myself the question really often, how can I not do that? As also as someone without really like the technical musical skills to really delve into my musical culture and like make something that's like a 17/8 kind of beat that I've been working on for the past 20 years, you know. I ask myself that question really often because I think, not because I think that, but specifically because I think you don't actually need the musical tools that a classical Arabic musician might have, you know. In fact, I think I got into this believing that I don't have to make something really esoteric and super high culture in order for it to be non-Western, or in order for it to be challenging like a hegemonic listening system, or like to be challenging kind of an audience that really sometimes only pretends like it likes me when it feels good for the audience, rather than, you know, it wants to have its entire worldview challenged by the music that I make. And that's kind of the point for me. Yeah, and maybe we can later on in the talk about like what that means. But I'm right now just commenting on the fact that like I found it very difficult living in London to not make those sounds, or like to not make, and I want to add like obviously the extra layer, to not make those sounds that are specifically like white person happy, or like that are specifically for an imagined audience that doesn't know anything about my culture. But I do want to add that it's like really, sometimes I have to keep into account that whenever I'm doing research about my own music or my own culture, and I do a lot of this, I have to also know deeply that sometimes, yeah, I'm also grateful to be here because I know that if I'm making this music in Palestine, there's also like this gendered layer of like, what kind of music am I allowed to make with my voice? And the voice is a very gendered, and it's my main tool, and it's a very gendered tool, right? And a tool is a very, like, I'm using the word tool just to make things fast. But yeah, it's really tough. I want to hear what everyone else has to say now. Sorry, this is 8 minutes long now. Sorry.
Also, we have a long for the future, for future answers. We have a long time, so I think the topics we are talking on, it's huge. So it's okay to give long answers. I think everybody will have his time. It's okay. But yeah, let's go for the other guests, other speakers. Yeah, Hayk or Ruli.
That's okay. I kind of like her speaking about her ideas. It's fine. Yeah, for me, like I've had this yeah, especially in the early years of my career, people in the West normally would try to associate my music with like tradition. Every review, every time they always have to have like the word traditional there, or I don't know, some, you know, they have to be like, I understand, like but then it gives me an opportunity to reflect on what is this, why they try to label us this way while we're not, you know, we're not making any traditional music. Is for them is cool, but for us living in Indonesia is sort of like a disrespect to the tradition that is real here, you know. We don't play it like that, and they preserve it really well because for me, I think what you call it, ethnic music or traditional music is to not sorry, my English is in order not to make it like what you call it, appropriation. I think the only way to do it is to really understand that tradition is about the value. So without understanding the value, then you only get the motive, you only get the what you call it, the surface. You only get the the motive is nothing, right? So it's and that's what people think tradition is. They think is the instrument. They think is the musical scale. They think is the clothing. They think is the way they sing, but it's actually not. It's just the motive. The what traditional, especially in music, is the not even culture, is the value of the culture, which is something more essential than the culture itself. So without understanding why they sing it like that, why the lyrics like that, why they have to use this instrument, why they sing it in this note. So it's not about the notes, it's not about the instrument even, it's not about the music even. For example, gamelan, so gamelan, when everybody can study gamelan, everybody can buy, everybody can build like the gongs and everything, but it's just the instrument. The purpose of gamelan music, why is a tradition, why it's being preserved and taught to young kids, is not to make them a professional or better gamelan musicians. No, it's to teach them to be a good Javanese. So in order to understand the value, the kids need to learn the instrument, because in the instrument, in the music itself is underlying all of the values from the culture. So once people realize this, then they realize it's not so easy anymore now, right, to appropriate, to use any kind of culture, right? So that's what I'm saying. So you can do it, and you also need to think about this. So because once you understand, you have respect, and once you have the respect, then I think there's no problem there. So I think maybe that. Yeah.
And when you say about value, usually people say esoteric meaning, and that the tradition is something really related with the like some spiritual activities, and some like labels start to mark it as like super ancient stuff, and speaking not about the value of tradition, but the exotic spiritual power of tradition. And they pretend to understand this, like to understand your tradition, because like, oh, it's shamanic, it's something like connected with the ancestors and so on. And here in our region, we can face it even from the local people who start to look at their own culture through the like Western cliches, and they like start to even work with their own culture as pop culture says how to work with the music. And Hayk?
So I can add something. I just want to say, like, our climate is doing everything. Like I'm playing woodwind instruments for generally, and when I am like in Armenia, it sounds different. Like our climate is making the traditions and something. For example, 10-15 years before I start to play in funerals, I start to make money in the funerals, and I start to learn. I play a lot of villages with local musicians, like old guys. They are playing like different music in funerals. In the same day, we are going to play in the wedding parties, and it's becoming from the nature, from the climate, because of like my instrument sound like becomes from the bamboo, like and it's totally voicing different in different. Like for example, once I play in Diyarbakir, it's Kurdistan. It's now in Turkey, and like my instruments start to voicing differently, not like in Armenia. And that time I understand it's like everything is the folklore, like classical music and everything. And for example, everything becomes, I think, from the ceremonies of the different sides of the world, and it's generally one thing, I thinking, because like, for example, 2 months before I go to Romania, and we meet with the Romanian musicians and start to play like 5 hours. We don't speak each other. Then after this 5 hour, we start to understand. It's like something same, because it's everything is becoming from the climate and the folklore music and the ceremonies, kind of same kind of difference. Yeah, I think.
I have something to add to all the from all the speeches about the instruments exactly. Well, in our tradition, in Circassian tradition, we use shchepshin. It's a 2 or 3 string violin, fiddle, like a traditional one. And this instrument becomes a symbol of a Circassian music. But then we start to look at the archives, old photos, and some like some footage, some videos, and many people in the past was using just normal, just not normal. This is like a colonial thing. They're just a European violin, and they was tuned it in the Circassian style and was playing our traditional melodies on the Western instruments. And bands which we are working with start to use the cellos and violins too to make traditional Circassian music. And many people start to say to us that, well, this is not a traditional. You take a modern instruments, not our old one. And we understand that it's exactly what Ruli said, that this is the tradition is not only the instruments, it's not only some objects, it's the value and it's the way of thinking, how you understand your culture, how you can reinterpret some tools from outside to your culture. Because people usually think that tradition is something that's caged in the region and it's closed and nothing is changed in tradition. But tradition is something alive, and it's not something that just comes from the past and preserved and never changed. So I think this understanding of the tradition is like just a number of cliches of instruments and of way of people looking. It's come maybe even from the ethnography, when they categorized people like, this is Indonesian instrument, this is like Armenian instrument, and this is how it must look and how it must sound. And even when we work with the with the young musicians who perform traditional music and who are from the cities, not from the village part of our region, usually people asking, but is this tradition still alive in the villages, or just it's like this artificial stuff? So yeah, I think it's too many cliches about about the music we are working with, and also that Ruli says that when the Westerns and when the people from outside look at the Indonesian band and they sound for them strange, they call it traditional, because if it's Indonesian, it means traditional Indonesian. So my next question is, do you think and do you see your music as like your local music? Like, can you describe for example, Hayk, your music is Armenian music, and what does make your music Armenian? And about Senyava and other projects by Ruli, do you think it's Indonesian? And what does make this music Indonesian? And Bint, the same question for you.
I think now it's not kind of Armenian. It's kind of it's not what is Armenian music. I think what is Armenian music? It's I think people living in this region, for example, in now, for example, I'm in Indonesia, and I'm checking how can I check the musicians and understanding it's something same thing, but with the here's climate, here's options, for me it's the same. It's the same feelings, same emotions. For example, someone in village want to how can I explain? Like someone is happy and playing something happy things. It's the same in Armenia, but different, like in scale stuff or something like. But feeling is the same. It's not about Armenian and Indonesian, or for example Palestinian. The story is the same, but the ways of the tell these stories is the different. It's becomes about the a lot of things. I don't know, genetics or traditions or information we are get from the childhood we are listening, or the like we have now in Armenia. Like a lot of years they are promoting something music, they are say it's Armenian music, but I think it's not Armenian music. Yes, and this information too, I think it's something for it's something.
Why do you think that the music that they play is not Armenian? What does make their music non-Armenian? Or do you mean that there is nothing like Armenian music in general, or just
okay, like we have something difference. You can listen, you can say okay, you understand it's something close to you, but when you're going deeply and listening someone's how can I say other region music, you that time you understand okay, it's something sounds how can I say different, but it's about the same thing. It's about you feel the same emotion you can feel like in Armenia or somewhere. You can listen someone who are singing or playing some music. Yeah, it's about same thing. It's my opinion. It's not Armenian, not yes, we have differences, of course, all of us. Like we have different languages, we have we are all the like complex of a lot of information, and we are the sometimes I feel like I am an instrument and I'm doing something and telling the story of this lot of information of something, but really I can't say it's really this part is Armenian, this part is non-Armenian, or this because of nowadays is very difficult to say, because now is a lot of information and a lot of influence from the other cultures and everything mixed together. I think it's but yes, we have some differences, but it's not really to say it's yeah, it's just Armenian and it's enough. Yeah, that's all. No, I think no.
Yeah. Ruli?
Sorry, what was the question again? Sorry.
What do you, can you describe your music as Indonesian music, and what what does make your music Indonesian, if you understand?
Well, firstly, it's not Indonesian music. That's for sure. I mean, that's for sure. Because why? Because but what makes it Indonesian, you say? I think what makes it Indonesian is me. So it's the music of me. So music, I think, should be very personal like this, because when you go to the personal level, it will be fair. It will be fair because it's the person who the artist will become. The artists have idea, have ideals, have views and vision and whatever that they want to be understood. They want people to understand and be able to see it through their work. So how can people see that if they only see that as Indonesians? And that means the value has to be like the traditional value. You cannot achieve that personal level. So, but if you go to the personal level first, then being Indonesian is part of it. Because I am an Indonesian person, and I cannot remove that from my identity. I'm in part of. So what makes it Indonesian are basically just two things. One is the language, and including the accents and the sound and the way the logic of language, not only the sound, but the logic of how I make my thinking. That and memory. So I have my own memory of being who I am, which is mostly an Indonesian, and this manifests in my work, and that's it. And if you ask what makes it Indonesian, it's only these two things. It's not about the music at all. It's just about these two. Music is the manifestation of these two things: the language and my memory, or my history, and that's it. So nothing Indonesian about my music, but I am an Indonesian, So if you go to the personal level, being Indonesian is part of it. So if you want to know more about Indonesian, you can. But through me, yes, of course. But it's not. The music is not Indonesian. Indonesian music is made by an Indonesian person. Yes. Yeah.
So paradox, like in. Yeah.
That's so, like, exactly what I was going to say is kind of the opposite. Is just that maybe what's most Palestinian about my music, and I consider my music quite Palestinian, I'll explain why in a minute, but maybe what makes it the most Palestinian is the fact that when I make it, I want to use it as a way of imagining a different Palestinian future, and I have no good reason. I don't think that Palestine exists. I don't think that Israel exists. I don't think any of these like imagined borders that we've made are real. Like, right? I want to start from there, but I have experienced like quite specific, maybe, experiences that are really beautiful, and also injustices that are very specific to being Palestinian. So when I think of like what I want my music to go and do in the world, when I no longer own it, is that I want it to make that Palestinian future. And if this Palestinian future, which is from my intentions Palestinian, but goes into the world, and someone who's like Guatemalan finds it and actually thinks, I fucking hate land appropriation. I hate companies coming to tell me that, my land is not mine, and I need to be like eating a specific way and like drinking so much Coca-Cola in my life. And I, as a woman, and I, I'm not allowed to do all of these things with my body. I think that if my music can be instrumentalized in that way in other parts of the world, amazing. But when I make something, I'm constantly thinking, I can't really claim to be enlightened enough to be thinking beyond the Palestinian experience. Because of just where I've, come from and the experiences that I've had. And I also understand that I want it to make real, to like make more tangible, more concrete, a worldview. Like, I don't think that music is good for entertainment. I think like music has made me so sad, and it's like brought out so much shit, So I don't know if I know that it can be like very celebratory and very like jovial, but it can also bring out all this sadness. So So I wanted to also, if I'm going to use it as a tool for something, I wanted to make much more tangible a worldview that is not the one that we were given as colonial subjects. So what I'm referring to right now is like, if I want to give an example, it's like I'll get to this now, and then I'm going to use this example to do something else with it. So basically, I did a lot of research when I was like a few years ago on the practice of asking for rain from using song. So I sang a lot of rain summoning music. And I went into this as an ethnomusicologist, I went into this as an ethnomusicologist, and I thought, yeah, I'm just going to go research this because I know that these songs have like potential to like help people be freed from Israeli colonization, and people to like think past their colonization by using our past, by using our traditions, our musical traditions. But then when I started practicing those songs, I realized I'm just imposing my own Western internalized bullshit. This is not what we're going to use this music for. Literally, I'm going to believe what this music tells me, right? We have the capacity as people, as communities living in specific parts of the world to actually ask for the rain, So for me, that was like changed my worldview about like how, like what music does, what I want my music to do, what sound is, where it calls to, what it reaches. All of those things were like very new to me. And I thought that was like much more important than any political statement that I could make, free Palestine, free all political prisoners. More importantly, we have superpowers with our voices, It's like, for me, that's a much like a really powerful decolonial way of being. So I want to use that example also to bring it back to, I think Ruli was talking about the fact that, also Bulat, I think, a lot of like the way that our music is essentialized or made into like this block of unchanging shit, it is by imagining that it's one thing or another thing, or like, it's like made into this mummy. And there are lots of ways to do this using the substance of the research that whoever, like anthropologist and ethnographer, is doing. But one way is, like you said, to make it into this always like mystical, like shamanic, like woo-woo, like we're making, burn a candle, kind of like do some incense, then, go do some shamanic shit with your music. Another way that I found that applies a lot to the Palestinian music research is the fact that researchers have always come to Palestine and thought, these mystical practices have material and economic origins, and they have like really like logical ways of thinking about them, but the people in this village have just convinced themselves actually that they have the capacity to actually bring rain. And I found this just as powerful as a myth, to convince people that they are to convince people that their own worldview about like why they used rain summoning music was also invalid. So I found that it goes both ways. You can like really think of this music as like so for example, we have a lot of springs, water springs, brooks, streams, whatever, that people think are inhabited by spirits that protect the water sources. I don't know if this exists. I'm sure actually it probably exists in a lot of other places. But so for the local community, this is just a water spring that's inhabited by a creature, or that is owned by a creature, that is protected by a creature. We probably can't see that creature. For the researcher, people need a way to protect the water source from being overused, abused. So therefore, they have invented this creature that, they've collectively imagined the creature that protects the water source. So I found that just as harmful. Why can't we just believe people when they say, this is what it like, yeah. And then I keep swinging kind of back and forth between like, yeah, feeling like I'm also co-opting something and feeling like I'm also appropriating something, because in the end, like I grew up in the city without access to most of like my culture in like a real way, apart from like, you know, folklore. Now we are going to sing a folklore. So a lot of the times I you know, quite often I think, okay, but this isn't like, you know, like I've had my culture quite boxed out of my life. So sometimes it feels like reclamation, and other times it feels like theft, or like reappropriation in a way that's very selfish, or that's very like self-serving. But to go back to the question, every time I make the music that I make live to an audience, I have the intention of like imbuing it with a Palestinian experience for a Palestinian future. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
This is really related with what I think with many people in the different regions feels, and it sounds really, this idea sounds really close to me. Also, this question of appropriation and self-appropriation and reappropriation of the like your own culture, and what is your own, that this culture belong to the people who didn't accept it when he was a child or teenager, and when it starts. It's very difficult questions, but let's discuss this thing of appropriation. Don't you think this is like a dangerous thing to box the culture, like this is appropriation, this is not? And don't you think that we can cut off many people from the culture, and culture from the many people, if we will, like I don't know how to express it, how to say that, maybe too fragile, if we will be too, like, be too polite with the culture and too afraid of making appropriation, and then we will, like, it can start another exotization, like, oh, this is another culture, that I don't belong to this because I grow up in the city, or because I grow up in the diaspora, or in the other culture. So how to work with this, how not to be appropriator, but working with the culture? Who wants to start?
Well, let me smoke first. Well, if you talk about appropriation, is always linked to colonialism, you know. So because it's rooted in like and colonialism is oppression, you know, and then yeah, it's I don't know what to say. To wait. For example, like I've also like traveled across Indonesia to see like because in Indonesia we have like literally thousands of islands with like thousands of different cultures, languages, religion, beliefs, and stuff like that. And there are many are still like really preserved. And then a lot of these cultures, like, they don't actually want to be exposed. You know what I mean? They don't want other people to use, or even, for example, you cannot record if they do ceremonies or something like that. So what will happen if we always think that it's okay to appropriate because I respect your culture, I want to show it to the world. I want to, you know, because that's always the reason. It's always like, yeah, I want to make it more like contemporary. That's also another word. Everything has to be contemporary now. But what about maybe it's not always have to be like that, you know, because there are a lot of again, it's about values. If we wanna respect that culture, if their value is to be private, then we should respect that. If their value is to be, you know, we just want to be like, we have to respect that. So this is, I think, the lines is like what to appropriate and what not to, you know. For example, I don't know, a lot of oppressed culture, you don't want to appropriate, you know, Black culture, for example, we know is very oppressed in the US. You know, you have to know things in order to use other people's stuff. That's basically the idea. Of course, you can if you know and you're confident and you know that you're being respectful. I think there should be no problem. And I have a lot of people too, you know, my friends, like, I know they are appropriating it, but I don't mind because I know they know, you know what I mean? I know they know. But we have to know there is a as I've been said, like a clearly difference in power dynamics between the West and non-West here. So there's that. So how to not give the freedom to people who want to use that to oppress or to keep the hierarchical power structure. So this is the issue here. I think it's very complicated, but yeah.
Hayk? Nobody wants to talk.
I think Hayk might have maybe a technical issue, but I want to make. Oh, do you want to go? Go. Okay.
Okay, it's just technical. Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to say, yeah, power is a huge one, but it's also, I mean, what like. Okay, so I think you mentioned like being precious about the culture. And then thinking, like, should I make this contemporary? Should I like do something with it? Am I just gatekeeping it so that I can like think of myself as like being a good person and like not having changed it so much that it's like not what the culture wants? And I think in this moment, I want to bring up two things. Kind of the first one is that a lot of the places that I've visited, I feel like there's like I can consider the culture an agent that can defend itself, that can behave on behalf of itself, that can speak for itself, and in other places just not, you know. And like even like the same exact line of questioning I was following, I went to a village called Nabi Saleh where I fully, like at that point I was like a converted person, you know. I was just believed that rain something was real and like we could do it and like it has such liberatory potential. And I go to this village and then this old lady's like, like this is something that we used to do in the past because we were ignorant and because we like didn't know the original like rules of worship, you know, because it's also a very religious tradition. So it gets pretty complicated for me in moments like those because sometimes I feel like I'm giving too much power to the idea that I don't actually belong to this culture. And I don't want to do that. I want to belong to this culture in a comfortable, like luxurious, future-oriented way, without thinking that it's scarce or that it's about to like go away, like to be disappeared off the face of the earth. So I guess to bring it back to like in my case specifically, I knew part of the reason why I knew that I needed to sing those songs, even if I butchered them, you know, even if I did them really poorly, is because like there's a, you know, a colonial force that's being very specific about the fact that it doesn't want us to have access to our culture, and that prevents us from going to do our foraging, you know, techniques that we know how to do better than any other colonial system could ever teach us. And it wants us to not have access to our songs, and it wants us to like maybe even it has done the most to preserve them in its own archive where we can't reach them, but they're perfectly there, you know, they're not going anywhere, you know. So the preservation has already happened, and particularly this colonial context. And I want to say, like, I guess this is really obvious, but a lot of a lot of what colonization is, at least in the Palestinian context, and I know in like a lot of the Arab context, was just gathering information, was knowing as much as you can, recording as much as you can about the native population. And I know this is like really old school colonization, and it's not like the neoliberal hell that we currently live in. But so for me, that process of like just knowing and just repeating and just recording that was a tool that already belonged to a colonizer. That was like a tool that like meant that the work would have to die alone in an archive. So for me, it felt really necessary. I have to sing this. I have to improvise it. I'm never going to go on stage and know what actually I'm going to sing. And I'm going to decide on the spot, because this is the art that we sing now. It's not the art that we used to sing. And I'm just here to like retell it to you. So those were my factors, those were the reasons where I thought that actually, like, I'm going to make it sound weird. And I'm like, we're all going to live with this, because I can't afford to imitate what Israeli settler colonialism has already done, with taking every single thing and wanting to replicate it or co-opt it and put it away in an archive somewhere. I just couldn't afford that thought. But then there's also, then I did this other project about, sorry if you can hear the siren. I did this other project that's about the visitations that people used to do to a shrine, particularly in the southeast of Palestine, near Jericho, on one of the lowest parts of land on earth, like closest to the earth, for the prophet Moses. And then this really got like much more complicated, because we have to think about like what kind of technology and what kind of tools we had as a native population that knew that it was like dwindling, and knew that a lot of like our songs were actually disappearing. And that's what was happening with the prophet Moses. People used to go and they used to visit and they used to sing the songs that would happen. But as Palestinians, after this tradition kind of like disappeared off the face of the earth because of exodus, displacement, exile, and genocide, we didn't have the necessary tools. And we forget, right? Now you can like walk out with a Zoom and record whatever you want. Like 50 years ago, this wasn't necessarily such a possibility. So a huge part of what I've done also is to just acknowledge that, and then be forced into a corner where I have to sing these songs, but I have no sonic reference. I just have words. And I know that's like a pretty specific context to be working with. But what I think is not a specific context to be working with is, if you're the native, you will not have access to the technological tools that the occupier has usually. So like, it's going to be your task to reinvent something. So I feel like it's my it's my job, and it's fun, even though the culture probably doesn't need me, like, as I said, it has a lot of its own agency and it's very powerful on its own. But it's my joy, it's my ambition to go out and to say, okay, this is how we sing this. And like, very few people have that entitlement also, because it takes overcoming a lot of technological obstacles. It takes overcoming a lot of like labor condition obstacles because of how we live. And I want to go back to something that Ruli said about going to various cultures and places that like actually want to be kept a secret, because they are aware, surely, of what it means to like be so seen by the world, and how violent this process can be, to be seen. And this is, for me, like bringing it back to the fact that the music is not for entertainment. It's not just something that they do for fun, and it could be, but essentially it's like a way of seeing the world. So it could be like a process that someone is going through to be married, and there's music in that, and it has this very specific like spiritual purpose. It could be someone who's possessed by an evil spirit, and that music is helping to remove that spirit. So I really respect like all of those different things that music can do that are not art. And we call it music also, but when it's a zar tradition where you're actually expelling a jinn from someone's body, maybe it's not actually, maybe there's sound present, and the sound is a facilitator and it's a mediator and it's doing all of the work, but maybe it's not doing the purpose that music does. So maybe we're not actually listening to music. And I have a lot of respect for the secrecy of that, or like the unobservability, the unknowability of that. But thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, thank you. And Hayk?
I want to understand the question, and sorry for the technical problems. It's about now I will read and
The fear of cultural appropriation. Who can work with the other cultures? To whom culture is belong? Like, and how to make this connection without appropriation?
I think everyone can do this because this is the something different way of the evolution of something other culture. If you are start to, I can give the example, like you start to play Armenian music. We are talking about this, like start to learn something, and you can make your own stuff in Armenian music. It's something different way of the evolution of the Armenian of the regional music, I think. It's a normal for me, and everyone do this now, and not only now. Everyone doing the music, the art, and if you going deeply, you can understand. Okay, this part from this side, this part from influence, like from this culture, and it's okay. It's something. Different way of the evolution, not only like for example, we are going some region and the village and they are singing something specific songs, and someone from other village can listen this and go somewhere and start to remember, repeat, and it's not the same, it's culture. I think it's the not same something, but it's the sharing of the information, and it's helping to make something new evolution of this culture. Maybe it's not maybe someone don't feel like who originally from this side and doing this, but I think it's normal, and it's good to do this because it's a part of the evolution. I think what is huge thing. Yeah.
I think in the end we all talking about the problem and the thing that makes some cultural, let's say, exchange or using the appropriation is the power, the question of power. When it's like two villages who is connected and people just really connected, and culture and music is circulated between two villages, it's not an appropriation, it's a really exchange. But when somebody who have power comes to your land and take your culture without respect and without even asking, can he do it or not? That's how start the appropriation.
Of course.
But yeah, it's a complicated question also because the culture is not belong to somebody else. If let's take, for example, Circassian culture, some Circassians can be against you to take some like elements, the other will be okay with this, and there is no dogmatic things when like some like a president of the culture who can let you use it or not use it. So yeah, I think from
if
the
it's if it's organic something, if it's happening like they are sharing together, they are living together and doing some music, exchanging. For example, in our region, Tbilisi is the center of like we are meeting each other. This Caucasus, how can I say? In Caucasus, Tbilisi is the center. We are meet all the nationalities there and doing some exchanging about like 100 years. It's normal, but when someone takes something and presenting it's our culture, and you can see if if you going deeply, you see it's not true. It's something I don't know, political something things. Yes, it's not about the music or art or something. My opinion.
No, thank you.
Mm.
Yeah, and let me add something about Tbilisi too. Tbilisi, it's kind of center of Caucasus on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's mostly center of the South Caucasus because because of the political borders, because most of the part of the North Caucasus is a part of Russia now after the 19th century, after colonization. So Georgians I can't say they don't know nothing, but they don't know much about the people in the North Caucasus from where I'm from, and the people from North Caucasus know about Georgians mostly it's only cliches. So because the states and the governments made some borders, the cultural exchange stopped. And the terrible thing is the people start looking on each other and the history and the history of their relations through these political and propagandistic cliches. So I think these political issues, it's not the same, but the nature of these issues in the different regions of the world is quite the same. They have the same nature. And now we are talking with we are persons from the different regions of the world, but the problem, what we are talking about, we can understand each other clear because we face with the not similar but really close problems, and this is a terrible thing. It's not something natural. It's not because just we are human. It's because of the state of the world, how it was politically built in the past and how it goes now. And I think the context that we are in the same context, it says nothing good about the world statement now. So I think soon we need to finish our conversation. Of course, it's tons of interesting questions to discuss, but maybe it's something that you want to add, something that you want to say that you didn't for the final part. Yeah. Who wants to start? Or everything is clear and we need to think about these things and make another meeting or something like this.
Another one.
So, okay then. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody. I hope all of us I really appreciate that, and I like that we have like different ideas, and maybe sometimes we can disagree with each other, and I think that's how decolonization is working. We don't create some dogma or so some rules how to make things, but we are about diversity of tools and methods. I think like the art that you are doing is really important for different people, for different sides. I honestly can say that it's important for me. So thank you so much. I hope we will meet offline somewhere, and maybe our collaboration can be deeper, not only just sharing ideas.
Can I say one last thing? Actually, sorry, I forgot that I wanted to say this.
Okay.
I was thinking about the fact that every time we make music, we have like, because we were talking about appropriation just a minute ago, and there's a lot, and I was talking about like what intention I have for the music that I make. But when we make the music, we don't own it anymore. Like, and like in a perfect world, we don't want to own it either, you know? In this world, if we don't kind of take some responsibility for it, it's going to be used by like some like Nazis for some shit, you know? But in a perfect world, we don't have to own the music that we make. And that made me think a lot about like appropriation or like the remaking of music. Because I think, for example, we're in the World Cup right now, and we see a lot of like ultras fans, and we see a lot of like really weird, like nationalistic sentiments coming out of people when they sing the songs in the football stadiums in Qatar. But in a way, like there's also, you know, there's something that's quite liberating about the fact that regardless of the context in which that music was made, not fully regardless, but like after it's made, it goes into the world, and then it has a life of its own, you know? I find a lot of the chants that at least like the Moroccan fans were singing a few days ago, like super meaningful, super liberating as a non-football fan, as someone who doesn't believe in like nation states, as someone who, you know, so yeah, I just want to say that I trust that no matter what the power relations of music are, there is an audience, there is like something powerful that listening to music does, that remakes it into something really, that has the potential to remake it into something really like powerful and meaningful and democratic, even maybe not democratic, but like grassroots. So yeah, thanks for having us on. And it was really a pleasure to speak to everyone. Hoping to meet.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
to
you,
Urvakan.
everybody. Thank you, Bulat, again. Yeah. See you. So we go now?
Yeah, I think we are free.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you somewhere.
Yeah, see you soon.